Oh, okay. Cut it out.
We're just going to get started here shortly, so if everyone can take their seats so I can see anyone. Inventory availability on the Friday morning instead of the late into the Saturday morning hours, so you'll be able to see every location and what they're going to be getting as far as products.
Malt Scotch and Irish whiskey for the brand. A little bit about Beam Suntory. Beam Suntory, when many of you hear that, you go, what is that? It is a very large company. As a matter of fact, it's second, about to be, largest company in the world for spirits distribution. We are the largest brown spirits distributor in the world. We own brands that you know, such as Canadian Club, Alberta Premium, Jim Beam, Maker's Mark, Knob Creek, Basil Hayden, Bowmore Laphroaig. And then we also own many other companies such as tequila brands like Sosa Tequila. We own Hornitos Tequila, Tres Generación Tequila, which is a new and fun tequila in your market, hopefully. And then we have Sipsmith Gin. The list goes on and on. So Cavassier, Yamazaki, Hakushu, Japanese whiskeys, which we don't see those necessarily in market. Yamazaki you might see. You'll see Suntory, Hibiki on the shelves. So it's a very large company. We're the only company in the world that produces whiskey in those 5 major regions: Canada, US, Scotland, Ireland, and Japan. Tonight, we're going to focus on one region, my favorite region, the one that employs me, and that's Scotland. And we're going to get into all things Scotch. Now, many of you are Laphroaig fans, as I see, which is also great. And just as the shirt does state on the back of James, the statement, we don't make friends easy, but when we do, it's often for life. Is that what your shirt says, sir? Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. I knew it was one of the quotes on the back of your shirt. I just went with that one because it can be a very acquired taste. If you are here, you likely have acquired that taste. So that's good news because we are going to go through 4 Laphroaigs and 2 Bowmore tonight. I'll take you through what's in the glass. I'll take you through the history of the distillery and tell you some fun, cool facts about the distilleries, both of them. And we'll cover some base 101 about single malt Scotch. What I won't do as a brand ambassador, which everyone always kind of gets mad at me sometimes, but we'll get there, I won't give you tasting notes because that's what you guys are here for. You guys are here to go through the experience, learn a little bit about whiskey, hopefully, and just enjoy that moment. So I want to make sure everybody's on the same playing field, and doing hundreds of these tastings now, I still will always start off with the how to drink whiskey. The first answer is whatever bloody way you want, okay? That is the true answer. If you want to mix it with Coca-Cola, rock and roll, that's your choice. But there are some key elements into understanding, and I've been able to learn from master distillers, master blenders, fellow ambassadors, all sorts of different people in the whiskey world. So I've kind of just taken a little bit of everything and just kind of gone through a vision. So what we're going to do is we're going to start on our first whiskey. We're starting at number 1, so bottom left. We're going to go 1 to 6 in that order. All of these are big, bold, rich whiskeys. To be very frank with you, the ABV in them can range anywhere from 43 right up to 56% tonight. So, in front of you, you do have a charcuterie board. Some meats, some cheese, fresh fruit is going to be key tonight. Have some fruit in between your samples. Have some of the crackers in between your samples. Get the palate cleansed because we're dealing with a lot of big flavors in these glasses. So, I think one of the third whiskeys, second whiskey? Yeah, like the second whiskey we do is like 56%. So we're gonna blow your palate right out of the water. Just mess everything all up tonight, but that's okay. That's why we have these snacks and treats. And obviously we also want to encourage responsible beverage consumption. So when we go to drink whiskey, let's all do this one together. And what I want to do is we go through a sensory experience, right? So we want to use as many senses as we can to understand our single malt Scotch. So the first sense we're going to do is sight. So I'm going to hold my whiskey up to the light. I'm going to get a good idea of the coloration. Some of those who know me, what colors do you see? Okay.
Amber.
Okay. You guys are really boring right now. If caramel and amber is all I'm gonna get, we gotta be exciting with this.
Bronze, metals.
I want it to be. I want you to have fun when you drink whiskey. So let's get a little bit creative. Go to the paint store, go to paint your bathroom, and pick out a paint chip. And it's like Arizona sunset, Miami Beach, whatever. Have some fun and get a little creative with your coloration. No more honey and caramel and amber colors. Brown, whoever said that. I think that was James, wasn't it? Was that you? No? Okay. All right. So enjoy the coloration of your whiskey. Now, there's something else that we're doing. I'm rolling my whiskey gently along my glass. I'm not going to swirl it like it's red wine. There's a reason for that. When we swirl wine, we do it for what reason? Aerate. We want to open it up and let it breathe. Wine's 12 to 14% alcohol. So when you swirl wine, alcohol is being released because alcohol is lighter than water. So then you put your nose in there and you smell it, and it's a beautiful bouquet. You get all sorts of different scents. When you swirl whiskey, by law, this is minimum 40%. When you have 40% alcohol, it's not necessarily the most beautiful thing you've ever put in your nose. So you're going to gently roll it versus swirling it fast, because we don't want that alcohol necessarily to go punch us in the face. If it does that, we stand a chance at burning our aromatics. When we burn our aromatics, we burn our palate. You taste with so much of your sense of smell. So that's really important to keep that intact throughout the night. Also, when we get into smelling our whiskey, we're going to use every aspect of our nose possible. And what we want to do is keep our mouth slightly open the entire time. A couple of reasons. First reason, as you breathe in, you allow air to escape. Again, less chance of burning the aromatics. Second, you look absolutely ridiculous, so I can take pictures and put it on Instagram. It's a lot of fun. But most of all, your palate's also activated as well to tell your brain what you're smelling, because your palate is it's about to experience something that's going to taste. So when your mouth is open, your palate is actually activated. So it helps you identify some of the smells within the glass a little bit easier. So the first whiskey we are drinking tonight is 10-year-old sherry oak finish from Laphroaig. All right. So we've done sense of sight. We've talked about sense of smell. What I want you to do as well, note something on sense of sight. So when we go to looking at our whiskey, you see these things rolling down the glass. What are they called?
Legs.
Legs. What do they mean? Alcohol content. So, why do we want to do that? Well, if you actually go, hold your last whiskey up. Hold whiskey number 6. Don't mix them up, please. Roll that beside this one, and you're going to see the difference in how fast the legs fall on the first one versus the second one. It takes much longer for that to fall because that sits at 51.5% alcohol content. Much thinner, much slower to fall. So you can actually tell alcohol content just by looking at the legs. All right, so now we are here to drink whiskey, right? So let's get our first sip. Now your first sip of your whiskey this evening, I'm gonna go and nose my whiskey. Mouth slightly ajar as I breathe in. Left to right, right to left. Start a few inches away. You can get closer and closer and closer. Slowly acclimate your sense of smell so it doesn't burn. Now you can pick up on some of the pleasant notes in the whiskey. We love, at the Bowmore distillery, we have something called the Art of Time. The Art of Time is just, goes into every aspect of making whiskey. One of the things that we really focus on is the nosing of the whiskey. We have a bottle called the Timeless Series, and it comes with a 3-minute hourglass. I don't know why we call it an hourglass if it's only 3 minutes, but still trying to figure that marketing genius out. And that glass is actually just for the nosing aspect of the whiskey. And it's amazing if you just slow it down. Slow it all down. It took us 10 years to make this particular whiskey. Aged in? No. Trick. Aged in American oak ex-bourbon cask, finished in a sherry oak. Big difference. It's not a strict, it says sherry oak finish. I want to be clear, it's a finish. A finish in the Scotch industry is typically 3 to 8 months. So it is a finish in sherry oak. Now, you will notice a very big difference in how pronounced it is in this particular one. So your first sip, put a little bit on your, just a quarter of a sip, let it coat your cheeks, let it get into your palate. You might not even like it. It's pretty likable, so if you don't, you're probably wrong. I'm kidding. But just let it sip. Don't hold it in your mouth. Don't do anything. Don't chew on it. Don't swirl it. Just let it coat the cheeks and swallow it. And be done with the first sip right away. Ta-da! Done. Acclimating our sense of taste is the same way of acclimating our sense of smell. And then about 5 seconds after, back here, your saliva glands go into overdrive. Your body's going to naturally add water to your whiskey for you. Everything's going to be balanced out. Now's when you go for your second sip, because everything's flowing, and you're like, okay. So when you go for your second sip, because your saliva glands are in overdrive right now, that's a good thing. So you're going to get to balance out the whiskey right away. It's the most important point of the presentation, so I hope you got all that. Chew your whiskey 6 to 8 seconds. Again, the faster we move whiskey, the more alcohol release, so I don't recommend its mouthwash. Nice, slow, gradual chew, like too much bubble gum in your mouth. Really get the flavors going. And then you get that nice long finish to the single malt Scotch that really shines. A stunner. I love this one. So your first one is a how to drink whiskey. I'm not going to cover, it's a get out of jail free. Every other one, you guys have to talk to me about what we smell. You guys have to talk to me about what we taste, because if I talk for 2 hours, you're going to get really bored real quick. My 10-year-old son would approve of that message as well. So, this is one of those moments where we just got into the 10-year-old chair. Who here has had this particular whiskey before? Half the room, I would say. All right. You guys need to be quiet right now. Let's go to the other half of the room, who the first time they've ever tasted this or smelt this. What are some of the things you might have tasted or smelt? And by the way, in this game, there's no wrong answers, because we are all uniquely different, and all of us, we've probably had cheese boards today, fish and chips for lunch, glasses of wine, beer, coffee, whatever. Maybe you've already had whiskey. I actually had 8 whiskeys earlier today in another training session. I didn't finish any of them. But this has replaced the Laphroaig Triple Wood, if you're familiar with the Laphroaig series. So no longer is Laphroaig Triple Wood available. So if you have a bottle, enjoy it. It'll be the last drams you drink. And the 10-year-old Sherry Oak is a part of that range now. And we're really excited about this. This really gives a good gateway into the world of Laphroaig, because the big, bold peat smoke flavor that we're known for in our classic 10-year-old, it gets very muted, not in a bad way, by the sherry oak finish. It's something I really appreciate. This is, James, you gotta help me on the pricing. Oh wait, no, you don't. They already took care of it. $109. So, right in the wheelhouse for Laphroaig. Fairly limited in production still. We're trying to get it. out there as much as we can, but we will have out of stocks throughout the year with this expression for sure. So take advantage when it's here.
What kind of sherries are you using? What kind of sherry casks?
So we use Sherry Oloroso. We also have PX Cask on site. We typically will stick to the Sherry Oloroso. There might be some crossover, so you might see PX and Sherry Oloroso influence in there.
Depending on the batch.
Yes.
You gotta keep on buying it now.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Whiskey in it, is it a one use, throw the cask, or do they do it?
So all of the casks that we use at Laphroaig, you'll see first and second fills only in this particular lineup. You might see third fills. After third fills, we've gotten away from doing fourth and fifth fills at both of our distilleries in Scotland. For the sake the barrel just becomes really muted after that. It becomes a dead or a neutral barrel in flavor. So first and second fill on this particular one. Good questions. You guys are awesome.
So year
We got
after
nerds in the house. I like this, guys.
so year after year with the sherry cask, the flavors may change a little bit from
Absolutely.
last year to this year to whatever.
Nobody's going to be able to tell.
No, okay.
Barry's doing a bang up job. Our former master, or distillery manager was John Campbell for years, and Barry McCaffer who took over last year. And we're going to get to taste one of Barry's first creations out of the distillery tonight in the fourth whiskey. So that's pretty exciting. I'm excited to taste that experience. I've already smelt it, and it's going to be fun. So, but yeah.
Are they seasoned sherry cask or mature?
I'm not sure if I understand.
Like a sherry cask seasoned sherry casks, or they like the casks mature? Like how long is the sherry? How long is the sherry cask?
So, one distillery only. What does the word malt represent? You guys have been to my classes before. You guys are really good. 100% malted barley, that's it. A blended Scotch whiskey could be made of what? Grain and malt. What types of grain could you use as an example? Corn is a very common one, good call out. Rye would be another one. So 100% malted barley only. All right. How many years do you need to be aged to be classed as a single malt Scotch whiskey? Three. You guys are good. Brought the good group this year. Good job, guys.
Back up again, James, on the single thing. You said single is from one distillery. I always thought single was from one batch.
No,
It's one distillery.
one distillery.
So if that's a really big distillery that has 59 different batches going, they can blend whatever they want. Minimum 10, as long as they get the flavor profile.
You are 100% correct.
So that's blended whiskey.
Nope, that's not blended whiskey at all, actually. That may be for you, but remember I said you can't be wrong? He's wrong. I'm out of here, I'm leaving.
Single cask whiskey would be expensive all the time.
There you go, that's okay.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of people start thinking single means one barrel. We could not afford to drink one barrel of whiskey at all. It would be get out of hand because the cost of production would be through the roof. So we will vat that together with multiple barrels and come up with a balance that we need.
It's also consistency of flavor, right? Not just
Sorry?
consistency of flavor too, right? Like
Absolutely.
A single barrel release is going to have variation.
I could age 3 barrels
The idea
here.
here is that this
All
sherry
in American oak for 10 years.
every time.
Every single barrel would taste different.
No.
Substantially different too, not just minor variances. So we have to make sure to have the consistency. So at the Laphroaig distillery, established in 1815, it's located on a little island on the west coast of Scotland called Islay. It is not pronounced Islay, so let me help you there. Islay is a tiny little island, and when we think of Islay single malts, we often think of big, bold, peated whiskeys. It's not necessarily true at all. If you go to the northern tip, there's 10 distilleries now on Islay. There's about to be 11 crazy. Chivas just announced they're going to have a single malt distillery there now. Everyone, Chivas. Everyone's joining the party. It's a good place to make whiskey. I think they figured out the trick. Population of Islay is like 3,000 people. There are 8 taxi drivers that provide you travel service to Islay. There are 3 police officers, all who are female, all who I would not mess with. I met one of them, not for any bad reasons. I want to make that clear. And there's 2 ways onto the island, by ferry or by plane. That's it. 2 flights a day. I think it's 24 people on that flight, maybe 18. So it's very hard to get in and out of Islay. And when you're there, you're going there for one reason. They have a really nice golf course. They have some beautiful hiking trails, but you're really going to drink whiskey. That's the reason why you're on Islay, and that's really what Islay is about. The northern tip of Islay, a few distilleries that are a little bit less peat infused, if any at all. You've got Brooklady, Bonahaben. Then as you get into the center of Islay, the capital of Islay is a town called Bowmore, which is also conveniently the name of our distillery. And then as you go to the very southern tip, that's where the reputation of Big Bold Peat comes from, because we have the big 3, Ardbeg, Laphroaig, and Lagavulin, just sitting at the southern tip, and Laphroaig being the most southern of those 3 distilleries. Those 3 distilleries have become so popular now, the actual government there's a path now that you can walk from distillery to distillery. It would take probably a good hour just to do the hike, and it would take you a good 3 hours to do the hike back, because you are slightly intoxicated. It's a lot of fun. They rent a lot of bikes out there, I'll tell you that. Nobody really rents cars. But it's a really magical place when you go to Islay, because there is really only one thing that they do with pride, and that is, well, actually they herd a lot of sheep too. So they make great whiskey, and there's a lot of sheep. That's what you need to know about Islay. And if you're going, pre-book your stay. There's not that many hotels.
Question around the malt and the barley that's used.
Walk through that.
Sure.
So there are 3 main providers for like 90% of the barley is produced by 3 different main people in Scotland. Those providers, a lot of that barley comes from the Highlands. If you're familiar where Aberdeen is, Glengarry, one of our distilleries just north of there, that's a very common area for a lot of the barley to come from for all Scotland. 3 main providers. What happens at the distillery is where the peat flavor comes. We'll have the barley brought into us. Now, some distilleries will have it brought into spec already peated, ready to go. Laphroaig and Bowmore both have their own malting floors. On that malting floor, which is literally just a large floor about the size of this liquor store, and we will spread 14 tons of barley onto that floor and just spread it out where it's a few inches deep. That barley will be saturated with water to get it to germinate, trick it into growing. That's the malting process. That provides the beautiful sugars that we get to create this beautiful alcohol, tricks it into growing. Then what we do is we're going to take that barley, we're going to put that into a kiln. In that kiln, we're going to light a fire with peat, and that smoke is going to rise up and just grab a hold of that barley. And because it is slightly damp, the water molecules grab a hold of that smoke flavor, and they really stick within the barley. Then we take the barley, we grind it down into a powder, and that's where we get into the fermentation process, and we go into our large vats where we go through fermentation. Would be at Laphroaig. We're currently at, I gotta check my notes, I think we're about 68 to 72 hours. We're one of the longest fermentations in the business. 72 hours is about as long as you can ferment barley. Once you get past that, you're going to get a flavor that's not necessarily. So 72 hours, it's becoming a common number for many of the distilleries at the Beam Centauri brand, where we know that's the best amount of time to like just max it out, right to 72 hours. So we're pretty much in that wheelhouse right now with that process. And then from there, then we start the distillation process.
Is the yeast proprietary, like is the yeast been there for hundreds of years, or is it something that gets changed?
Nope. Nope. It's funny you asked that. Most Scottish distilleries do not have proprietary yeast. Some will do experimentals, but for the most part in Scotland, brewer's yeast. Very commonly used. Now, if you go to the States, it's a totally different program. Jim Beam, for instance, you walk into the Jim Beam distillery, they have a jar in a locked glass vault. It's really cool. Only 2 people have access to that vault. Fred and Freddie know. That's it. And even when Suntory purchased the Beam Suntory brand, a lot of the people from Japan came over and they're like, oh, we would love to try and can we get into that strain of yeast? Fred's like, you touch that, I'm gonna break your neck. True Kentucky boy, in his finest moment, right? So, in the bourbon category, you're very specific to your strain of yeast. In Scotland, nope. Barley's temperamental enough to start playing with their own yeast strains could be detrimental and very costly. You guys are good. Lots of nerd questions. I love nerd questions. All right. So now your second whiskey. I've given you the get out of jail free on how to drink your whiskey. Take your time with this one, because this is our 10-year-old cask strength. So this is batch 15 currently being served to you. So we do these in batches, and on every bottle you'll see the date and the month that we did this batch. So December of 2021, this batch was done. When we say it's cask strength, that means it goes from essentially cask into one master vat into a bottle, done. This punches at 56.5% ABV. So you are taking almost a 10% hike in ABV right now. If you know the 10-year-old Laphroaig, it is aged 10 years exclusively in American oak, ex-bourbon barrels. Those barrels come from what distillery, if you know the answer?
Maker's Mark.
There you go, Maker's Mark. We have a great relationship with the Maker's Mark brand. We've had that relationship 30, 40 years now. So that is tried and true, and we use those barrels to make sure that we have consistency.
So you fluctuate on that when it's cask strength?
100%. So I have batch 13, 14, 15, and 16 on my house.
Okay.
All of them are different.
Okay.
So
Can't control it. That's the whole point.
that is the whole point. And everyone tastes uniquely different, and they all have different flavor profiles. Some are better than others. They're all darn good. Laphroaig would also be the #1 seller of single malt Scotch on Islay. Out of the 10 distilleries that are there, we produce about 3 million liters a year, which is actually not that much. If you put that in perspective, Glenfiddich would produce about 21 million liters a year. That's a number.
Quick question for you, James. Now you got your 10-year-old at 43%. You got your cask strengths. Do you put your barrels down specifically to say this is going to be part of the cask strength range, or are you just going for the 10-year-old whiskeys and not proofing it down for one or the other? Like first fill casks for your batches.
So Callum, who is our master blender for Beam Suntory, so he'll work with all of our distilleries, has final say on every single thing that really goes out. So when we get into that, that is happenstance. So when we go and nose a cask or do a sampling of it, we often just nose our cask. We can tell by just right away on the aromatics of the whiskey in the barrel where that's going to be. We might pull a cask aside and say, hey, let's use that for our 10-year-old cask strength. That's going to be a shine. That's going to win. We might go, that's going to be for quarter cask. We might go, oh, that's going to be for lore. So every single cask that gets nosed and tested as we go through that process. We talked about it this morning in the product itself. There's a lot of happy accidents in the world of whiskey, and that's the best way to make whiskey. Is do it with intentionality, but just sometimes you know when you go to that cask and you're like, that's going to be a gem. We need to pull that and save that for something special, because the way it just started in the cask and the way that cask is working with the whiskey, that's a special bottle.
What age does that, when does that start to develop?
Varies. Every single barrel. There's no set answer on that. That's why what the people like Callum do for our brands, and Ron Welsh, our former master blender, the ability to do what they do and the respect, it really, when you start understanding, you start really understanding, you're looking at an artist who's working with science, and it never quite aligns perfectly, and no one will ever be able to do it the way he did it. But now we have Barry, our distillery manager, so him and Callum work together on that now as a team, and they have to come up with that fine balance. So it is an art, with all science surrounding it.
So on that note, how much of it nowadays is science in a lab and analyzing, and how much comes down to the brewmasters?
There's really no science in a lab. There's really not. We run it through the distillation, that's where the science comes in. It's the science of going through the process of making whiskey. It's a true art form in how we get the flavors in the bottle.
And then how many times is this distilled? You hear about different, whether Irish whiskeys are 9 times, and so there's different.
Most Irish whiskeys are distilled 3 times.
3 times, okay.
So Jameson, the big one, would be distilled 3 times.
Okay.
Most single malt Scotch distilleries go through double distillation only.
Then the aging would take care of the different things that might not be desired. Is that where they dissipate, or?
No, every single step of the process. If we think about, I already talked about fermentation. That was the biggest learning curve that I ever had when I went to the distilleries and got to experience the fermentation. The length of fermentation is one of the biggest flavor game changers of the whiskeys. That's not something that we, sitting here drinking any bottle, has ever probably thought about. How long is this fermented for?
When you think about Brett, if you leave it for 3 days, it's going to be a different texture.
Right.
Than something you do right away.
Right, so the fermentation is probably the first step that really impacts the flavor of that whiskey. Then obviously the maturation process in that barrel is so much of that flavor profile. So there are so many steps along the way that can impact the flavors of our whiskey. Good questions, you guys are good. All right, we are 40 minutes in though, and I'm only 2 whiskeys in. Instead, I was gonna get you guys out of here early. That's gone to the birds now, Jesus. I love all these questions though. So, any questions about the 10-year-old?
I'd love to finish on that.
It's a fun whiskey, right? And yeah, any comments? So when I say questions, questions, shut them out. Yeah, it's a fun whiskey to play with. 10-year-old is kind of the epitome of what Laphroaig does. The 10-year-old cask strength is a very fun variant. We haven't seen the 10-year-old cask strength come to Canada until I think batch 13 was our first batch that we ever received in the Canadian market. And we have good news for you guys. Next year, Laphroaig would be the Canadian market, and Laphroaig, will be a top 5 market for our company as a whole. So Bowmore has been that for the last year. Laphroaig has now got that honor. So we have 2 of our biggest brands that, when I say we're a top 5 market globally in terms of what our invested interest is in, that means we get a lot of cool little extras and things like that, which we'll talk about with the Bowmore brand in a little bit. But let's continue on our journey of Laphroaig. So, Laphroaig Lore. So we talked a little bit about the transition from John Campbell to Barry McHaffer as our distillery manager. Well, Lore was created with the intent of how we maintain brand integrity and all the secrets. There are so many secrets that are passed along from distillery manager to distillery manager at the distillery. This is why Lore was created. It was meant to put all those secrets in a bottle. And it's done in an exquisite way. So there's all sorts of mystery into this particular liquid. In this bottle, you will see some very young Laphroaig in here.
Yeah.
You'll see some 8-year-old Laphroaig in here. You'll actually see some 7-year-old Laphroaig in here. You will see some quarter cask influence within the Lore. You'll see some sherry influence in the Lore. You'll see a 21-year-old influence in Laphroaig Lore. It is a non-age statement whiskey. The reason why we do a non-age statement whiskey is for these reasons right here. By law, we would have to put the number 7 on this bottle. That would not do the 21-year-old in the bottle any justice, and that's not fair. So we don't want to take away from that. So that's why non-age statement whiskeys really exist for a lot of reasons. When you're shopping for your single malt Scotch, don't always get hung up on a number. It doesn't mean everything. It really doesn't. This whiskey last year at the single malt Scotch Awards won best non-age statement whiskey. This whiskey is one of my favorite Laphroaigs. It's bold, it's rich, it's got a lot going on. The complexity is an amazing one. It punches in at 48% ABV, and it's worth every single penny. Retails at $214.99 now. Is that what you're looking at? Yeah. Don't bring that part up, James. They're here now. Damn it. So one of the great things about Laphroaig, established in 1815, and this is actually a very important note for you guys, especially my Laphroaig lovers that are in the room. These tubes are no longer. This is the last time you're going to see the tubes.
Oh.
Tubes are gone. We've gone to a box. It's an all-white box, and I'll tell you why we've done it. We have a 35% reduction, 35% reduction on our carbon footprint. We had to make a change in how we were impacting the environment. I love these tubes, but we gotta get away.
Clear across the platform.
Clear across. Now,
At least half Cardias.
How would it reduce footprint, using more material to make a box?
sorry?
You use more material to make a box than the tube.
No, you don't. Not at all. This is like triple layered cardboard with metal rings in it. The amount of cardboard that goes into this is way higher than what we use in a box. Yeah.
You build a tube the way you build a box.
No. Damn it, just accept my answers tonight. I'm kidding. Have fun. But yeah, so we've, the new packaging looks amazing. It looks more streamlined as well. Right now, like, it's a little bit all over the map. We don't have consistency in the actual box. So, or in the tube. In the box, it's a textured box. It's very pretty. And then at the bottom, you're gonna have a coloration at the bottom of green is on the tenure, like 3 different shades of green. Laphroaig Select, for those of you who buy that, we've changed the name of it. Same liquid. It's called Oak Select now. We just put the word oak in there. Just
Are you gonna lose the Prince of Wales now that he's king? Like the thing
no.
on there?
I'm glad you brought this up because I was going to talk about it anyways. So, on this, every box or tube that we have this little wheat sheath with 3 little hearts on it. This is a royal warrant. So this was given to us by, now king, but once upon a time Prince. Laphroaig is his favorite distillery. He has barrels currently in our warehouse. He's actually a diehard Beam Suntory fan, is what I've discovered. But this was given to us by the royal family, and it's a royal warrant. We have to maintain our reputation with the royal family to keep this signature on our box. We don't have this just because it's his favorite whiskey. We have this because of our commitment to the environment. Laphroaig is the only distillery out of the 150 approximately distilleries currently in Scotland that still hand cuts our own peat to this day. So all the peat that we burn at our distillery is cut from our lands. We have reinvested money back into Islay, and the amount of thought and care that we're giving into the environment is huge. We want to make sure that we can regenerate peat in the healthiest way possible, so we don't want to use any of the machine peat that is out there.
So with the peat bogs themselves, they're a finite resource. So can they take a long time to get to the point. So what is it then that you're doing specifically? Is it just you're not wasting as much because of hand cutting?
So by hand cutting, you don't waste nearly when you go through machine peating, they say like 40% of the soil can't be used. So, and then once you've gone through it, you can't go back and get it. It's like when you have a cookie cutter and you're going punching holes in the ground. Well, that dough, you can just roll back up and make a cookie. You can't do that with the earth. It doesn't work that way. So once we've done it, you've done it. So the peat bogs that we have, we actually have put a lot of money and investment and resources into doing it. We actually have a small committee right now that is even literally doing more research on it. And when I say a small committee, like there's like 4 people that are on that committee. They're actually looking at the Canadian market right now as an example as well, because we actually grow a lot of peat in Canada. I don't know if you guys know that, but we do. There's been talks that, you know, myself get involved and we can kind of look at what we're doing in Canada a little bit differently to maintain that healthy peat regeneration. We have peat forever, by the way. We have enough peat for the next hundreds of years. We aren't running out of peat.
When I was there 5 years ago, they did sustainability estimates and they said it's only going to last for another 800 years at that point.
Yeah. We're good. We're good.
Does any of the Canadian peat, like east of Winnipeg here, does that ever go to Scotland to be used? Do they buy?
Not in any of the Beam Suntory brands. That would be the only way I can answer that. I don't know.
A couple peated Canadian whiskeys though.
Yeah.
A handful of lots of them.
Yep.
Some of those use American.
Irish peat. Hey. Get their peat from where they get their peat from. We like to keep it local and home. All right. First 3 whiskeys down. We've talked about the Royal Warrant. We've talked about being established. We talked about cutting our own peat. We talked about having our own malting floor. Out of 150 distilleries in all of Scotland, under 10 have their own malting floors. It's painful. Now, we don't malt all of our barley on site. I'll be very forthcoming there. We malt about 30 to 40% of our barley is malted on site. We don't have the capacity to malt any more barley, so we could not malt enough barley to produce 3 million liters. There's no way we could do that. And we do experiment with different barleys.
So is what's malted on site in the special batch then?
So we hold them in different hoppers versus the stuff that we do bring in. We do some experimental where we use exclusive malted barley on site for some special. But oftentimes when we're going through the process, it is brought in with some of that brought in barley versus our malted.
Because the peat tastes very different from the Monkey Islands than it does from Ireland.
Peat is very different. Peat is a very terroir kind of feel and vibe.
Do you use exclusively peated malt?
Yeah. So all of our malt is peated. So it comes in peated to our specifications, and almost every distillery will do that.
Is it mostly, you guys have to,
Stop with the questions, guys. No, I'm kidding. So many questions.
you guys use the Port Ellen? Like Port Ellen, getting something else from Port Ellen?
Well, we used to, and then Diageo bought them, so no, we don't anymore. Yeah, jerks. Kidding. We're friends.
I could only got the last half.
Not really. We still have some.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about them. Kidding. We're all friends. We get along fine now. We really do. All right. Well, let's get on to our next Laphroaig. Oh. Oh. This is a special moment.
Yeah.
This is crazy. I haven't had a sip of this yet, guys. We're doing this together.
Can you tell us all your groups?
You and you. I see you both. Oh. Do you know what's funny? I would buy into that. So this is great. So this is, by the way, there's 2 bottles that if you don't leave here with those 2 bottles tonight, this is one of those. The other one I'll get to in a bit. But so This is the lovely Laphroaig Cardias. This comes out once a year. It's an annual release. And in late May, there's a big festival on Islay-An. Now, it started out as a music festival, and then the Scotch companies have just kiboshed that entire program, and now it's literally a wicked Scotch festival. And every day of the week, a distillery gets their own day. So we have Laphroaig Day, and this is released on that day at the distillery. Cardias is a Gaelic term that means friendship. And it's our way of saying thank you. So,
This has a nice little funk to it.
this funk is the best way to say this. This is crazy. When James walked in, I smelled it. I was like, what is, like, cheesy? Like, dirty cheese? I love it. With maybe dirty feet. This is a true fun Laphroaig. So every year we do a different release and we change it up every year. This is Barry McCaffer's first. More means black rock in Gaelic. It is due to when you go to the distillery, we have a little beach just literally right outside the distillery. And when you walk along that beach, the rock has this just black hue to it, very granite looking, a little bit darker on that rock. So Bowmore sits there to this day. Bowmore is the second oldest distillery in Scotland and the oldest distillery on Islay. Established in 1779. 240 plus years ago. That's crazy.
Who's the oldest?
Glentour.
Winter.
Yes, Glentour would be the oldest, and that is about to be refuted by another brand that we may own, but not yet. We don't have concrete. Glengarry looks like it would be the oldest actual active distillery in Scotland. They have like documents on site that would state Glengarry is the oldest, but we can't get those approved to say it legally, so we don't say it at all. Which I just did, so I broke the law. So Bowmore is one of the oldest distilleries in Scotland, and it's really deep and rich in history. Just like Laphroaig, we have our own malting floor at Bowmore, so we malt our own barley. About 30 to 40% of our own barley is malted on site by the distillery. With Bowmore, you get a much more balanced peat note. It's not that heavy. We measure peat in parts per million. Often in the Scotch industry, when you think of Laphroaig, our standard Laphroaig would measure at like 40 parts per million. Our Bowmore would measure at 25 parts per million. But that's before you go through the bottling process. By the time we get to the bottling process, parts per million actually probably in actual sense probably drops down to like 12, 15% with Bowmore. So it's a balanced piece. So there is some smoky notes in there. Also, we're drinking a 25-year-old whiskey right now, people. Yes. Quarter of a century. So when you age whiskey this long, the rich tannins of the oak barrels start to diffuse that smoky peat flavor profile, so it's not nearly as pronounced in more mature whiskeys when you get into this category. It's a different beast. Aged in ex-bourbon and sherry Oloroso cask, the 25-year-old.
It's the angel share.
It is a beautiful whiskey. This is a special one. Thank you to James, or I guess my brand desk. I don't know who's paying for it. This is a special one. This retails at $625. So we've taken a big step up in price point here. But you guys are worth it. We like you. David Turner is our current distillery manager at this distillery. David Turner was also just awarded as a keeper of the quake. Very rare opportunity to be assigned that role and that title in the world of Scotch. That's pretty much becoming a member of royalty. So David Turner has earned that right, and we're very proud of him. That was literally last month, a month and a half ago. He was given that honor. So
good.
It's also almost bubblegummy.
Bubblegummy.
Some original Hubba Bubba.
Black currants.
Sorry? ABV on this, 43%.
That's it?
That's it.
Wow.
Where's the rest of it?
That was cute. The Bowmore 25-year-old is definitely, it's part of our core range. It's definitely a little bit more collector, obviously, at the price point at $625. But I can tell you that we're always going to have available. I can tell you that it really does stand out as a single malt Scotch. A little bit more luxurious, obviously, as we get into a 25-year-old single malt Scotch. But still, when you look at the market value, we were looking at pricing earlier. I don't know too many 25-year-old single malts that are at that price point.
Yeah.
They're way higher still. So if we look at the other brands, competitive sets that are out there, we're still crushing it for value. Now we've got some cool things coming down the pipe from Bowmore, which we're going to discuss a little bit later. But there's a lot of great things coming from the brand. We are a top brand. We're a top market focus in the globe with Bowmore, and we've done that. You guys just love the brand. I don't know what it is, but like Bowmore in Canada, we get almost the same allocation on a global scale as the US does for Bowmore.
That's crazy.
They are like 10 times in population. It's insane to think. So you guys all saw me traveling with the ARC 52 last year. I had the nice fancy bottle at $125,000. It was really cool. Designed by Aston Martin. Looks all nice and fancy. We were literally given almost more of those than the US got. The US only got 10, which is insane to think. So we were able to move, we'll say 5 to 6 total by the time we're done. So it's a huge thing. And because of that, we also get first rights to a lot of the cool things that are coming down the pipeline. But I don't want to talk about that.
I do.
Such a tease. Gotta wait till next year.
Vault edition.
Yeah, we're
That's not coming to the table ever.
Ever?
Ever.
We're done on that?
We're done in the Vault Edition. The person who started the Vault Edition is no longer with our company. So we got through Vault Edition 1 and 2. It's an awesome series and I love it. I think
One's back.
you guys have one.
We've had it three out of 4 years. We had the second year, and then the last 2 years have been number one.
Vault Edition number 1 is being re-released at this distinction.
So,
3 times out of 4 years.
Again, that there's 5 cases releasing on Saturday.
Guys, get a hold of it. It's the Atlantic Sea Salt Edition. It's
So good.
That came
freaking
back around. I think it's the last
Edition
one.
one is
The
still
alternate
delicious.
as
I
well.
haven't.
Right.
Edition one.
Edition 1 is by far and away, like, they knocked it out of the park. It's really good liquid. We don't make it anymore. If you see it, grab it. It's a really great bottle to have in your collection if you're a Bowmore fan.
Gotta get the bottle.
All right.
We're doing the Aston Martin now?
All right, if I can grab the room again before I lose you all. I know after an hour and 15 it starts to get long. I'm sorry.
What's that in an Aston Martin one?
So
What's that in an Aston Martin one's in Toronto at the auto show?
let me tell you guys
Nice car.
about the future of Bowmore in the Canadian market. We will be the first country, well, we'll be the second country, first country other than China, to get a new collection that's coming out next year. I'm gonna guess next year at this time is when it'll be released. I'm gonna guess. Do not quote me on this. Things change in the world of whiskey, and it's always evolving. So we have a brand new lineup coming out next year for the entire range. We're only gonna get about 3,000 cases in total for Canada, and it's going to be a new range of sherry cask. 12, 15, 18, and a 21-year-old in that series.
Oh wow.
Finishes. Still insane. And we have a new pack change coming from Bowmore during that time as well. You won't see the new pack change in your market probably until 2025. I'm going to guess later into the June.
These are rebranding.
So far away.
Patch. Like a box. Or is it a rebranding?
3. Right.
Like the ball changes.
Ball changes slightly. I can tell you this. As the ambassador for Bowmore, I have never been so excited. It is one of the sexiest things I've ever seen. And James saw it at the national sales meeting.
It's sharp.
It says luxury single malt Scotch in every way, shape, and form, and we're really excited to see it hit. So, literally, in a year's time, you aren't going to have the 12, 15, 18, and 25 just on the shelf. You're going to have our core range, 12, 18, 15, 25, and then you're going to have the 12, 15, 18, and a 21-year-old in a sherry cask. So it's a big, big step from Bowmore, and we're one of the first countries to get it. So by being a top feature market globally, we get access to some of the newest innovations first. So let's go to our last whiskey of the night.
I just want to qualify really quick some of the things that James likes to say in his presentation, similar to the sherry cask where he says it's part of our core range and available all the time. Not all of these things will be on every shelf all the time, all throughout. It all depends on allocations. I'm guessing, I don't know what it looks like yet. We'll see in a year and a half time when it comes. That sherry cask range may just be a distinctions level item that comes out in the November and March spirits release. We will see.
That will not be a core range at all. That's a very limited run we're doing on that sherry cask. So that's not a core range, but you're going to see it out there for sure.
Yeah, so it'll be similar to what we're doing tonight and this weekend, where that sherry cask range will be available in very limited allocations at specific times throughout the year.
Like I just said, we're going to get
readily
like
available like he's hinting at.
3,000 cases to every, like all of Canada. That's not a lot of liquid, guys. So like, just understand that concept of it. So when that sherry range hits,
Buy it.
it's here and gone. So we're excited. I want to talk about this beautiful beast that is sitting behind me. This is one of my favorite stories. This is one of my favorite partnerships I've seen a single malt Scotch company do. If you were here last year, as some of you were, we've talked about the Aston Martin partnership. A lot of people still don't necessarily understand it, and that's okay. That's why I'm here tonight. So the Aston Martin partnership, it's not a partnership that we started because we thought it would be cool to have an Aston Martin logo on a Bowmore bottle. That would be bad for us. This partnership truly started because both these brands saw a lot of similarities in our core values, our core understanding, and our quality of craftsmanship, our attention to detail. And everything we do is done with intentionality. This 22-year-old that you're about to drink, I'm going to tell you the story of the Master's Selection, because we have quite a few Aston Martin editions out there now. It gets a little bit confusing. If you're a global traveler, you can go into a duty-free store and you'll see Bowmore Aston Martin bottles. You'll see a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old, and an 18-year-old available on the shelves. They come in cool boxes. The liquid's the same as what we would sell here. They're just, literally that's it. They're travel editions. They're in global travel retail airports. They're a lot of fun. Then we have something called the Master's Selection, which is this series. This series was developed to showcase our two masters, the master of Aston Martin, Merrick Reichman, Chief Design Officer, and Ron Welsh, which will soon be Callum, but Ron Welsh as our master blender for Beam Centauri. So what we did is we had these two come together and start talking and sharing ideas. So when we first created this, Merrick was really teaching us how they make an Aston Martin. Every car is designed based on the golden ratio, which is 2/3 to a 1/3 ratio of beauty. It's the science of beauty. It is taught in many universities. It is talked about in architecture, art, and almost all of design. We'll talk about the golden ratio. I won't say the joke, James. I refuse to do it now. I always say it's the same thing my parents used to create me. Perfect science of beauty. See, by saying I'm not going to say the joke, I still said it, I still win. So the golden ratio was the first one we ever did with Merrick and Ron, and Merrick actually worked at the distillery with Ron in creating whiskey using that methodology. So the golden ratio in a 21-year-old that we released last year at this event, I believe. Yeah.
We did the 21.
Yeah. So last year, that was 61.8% of that was aged in a 21-year-old sherry cask, with 38.2 of that being ex-bourbon American oak. That is the golden ratio, and that's also there was 6 other types of casks that were used in that from 1982, 1983, and 1984 that were white port, some other fortified wines that we had, and it all was done based on the golden ratio, so it was all done to a 0.38 usage in that. You almost get into Fibonacci sequential numbers when we made that particular whiskey. This one, and that was to show the golden ratio. This one was to show the spirit of unity between our two brands. How two brands could come together and connect so beautifully and continue this ideology of how we're going to work our two brands in. So you can see even on the box design, this piece of art at the bottom, it's all these lines are all connected. And that showcases that unity. Inside the box and inside the bottle, what you have, the liquid inside, well, a lot of people don't know this part, but we actually took a little bit of science and we still maintained a concept of the golden ratio in making this liquid, but this is a little bit more, if you had the Bowmore 21-year-old, probably was a little bit off the beaten path of what Bowmore would traditionally do, if that's a fair statement, I think. It's not what I expected. I liked it quite a bit. This one kind of shows us that unity going back to what we do in a really powerful way. This is 74.6% American oak hogshead. So a slightly larger cask, 260 liters, as we talked about. That's the major influence of this. The remainder of that is mainly that European oak sherry cask influence. 74.6, to let you know, in some mathematical way, and I'm not a math genius, but in some mathematical way, that was the golden ratio of the first influence of American oak barrels in the first one. So they took that number, came up to get the golden ratio for this one, so they used 74.6. Then, you know what's crazy? It's actually got about a 2% finish of port tawny cask in here. The port tawny gives it a really unique coloration and a very unique flavor profile. This, for me, is one of my favorite Bowmores that we've produced. This sits at 51.5%, and we have it at $719.99. Now, some people are like, that's like $300 more than it was last year. It's a totally different liquid. We have another one coming out literally in a couple of weeks in the States. Another 22-year-old made on a totally different principle, but it's our 3rd edition of the Master Selection to showcase the perpetual search of perfection. And we're always going to showcase a story behind it. Will it be the same price? Nope, it will not be. It'll be even more probably. These bottles have become super collectible and super coveted by the market. The secondary market on these bottles is already through the roof. So it's not some gimmick where we just thought it would be cool to partner up with Aston Martin. We wanted to make sure the liquid still spoke to both of our brands. Now, the cool part about my job, if you follow me on Instagram, you've probably been seeing me hanging out with a bunch of Aston Martins lately. They released a new car. They're like, oh, we should have James along. So I just get to go to a lot of cool events. But there's a lot of intentionality that goes into both these brands and the way we've collaborated on this. And this isn't, when I say it's a partnership, no money's been exchanged. Bowmore's not paying Aston Martin, and Aston Martin's not paying Bowmore. It's a partnership in craftsmanship and quality. A lot of people don't know we created 18 exclusive Aston Martin DBXs that you could buy that were with the Bowmore tartan inside on the interior, and in your dash panel, copper linings from our still that we had just decommissioned that year. We took copper string and they literally came and spooled it off and they put it throughout your dash panel of your car. So when you're in your car, you see the copper lining in your paneling, that's actually from our distillery. We made 18 of those exclusively. And you had to go and pick up your car at the distillery, which was also really cool, and you just got to drive around Islay for a day. But there's so many more things that we're doing. We had the ARC 52. We have something else coming that's bigger than the ARC 52.
My wife wouldn't let me.
We're always going, this is not a partnership that's about to stop. It's a partnership that really makes sense for two brands that are really, really well aligned. enjoy this whiskey tonight. And when you get to sip in this and you nose this one, take your time. Go back at it, try it one more time. This, for me, is a standout whiskey. The fact that we have some in this market is exciting. I can't see it lasting long. And it's been in market for a little bit. It's crazy to think. In BC and in New Brunswick, this was sold out within literally minutes. So, you guys still have it? Take advantage of the fact it's in your market, because it's a pretty rare bottle. To put it in perspective, the secondary market, the 21-year-old that went at $419, sells for $1,000 now in the secondary market a year later. That's
It
nuts.
was like 2 weeks after.
Yeah.
Selling for that much.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's the secondary market on the Aston Martin collectability aspect. Those Aston Martin people, the ones who do get to drive them, they love their whiskey. So enjoy this one. I just want to give a quick shout out to a couple of people. First and foremost, many of you know this fine gentleman sitting behind here with the glasses on. Looks like a Where's Waldo video without the red and white shirt. This is an amazing human being. His name is James Hart. He is the sales rep for retail for pretty much all of Manitoba, it feels like. Yeah, so that's what he does. So he looks after all the Manitoba Liquor Board stores and making sure that he can bring this product to you guys. So thank you, James, for setting this up. Our team here at the Manitoba Liquor Board, as they continue to kick butt and they help us out with this distinctions release. And last but not least, we will raise our final glass to you folks. Thank you for coming along for this journey and this ride. We get to hang out and drink amazing whiskey together. We get to meet new friends. Some of those friendships of James, how long have we all known each other now? 4 years now. We've known each other for 4 years. We met Sandeep last year. Like, we continue to meet people, whether it's at the Whiskey Festival or here in this room. So thank you to all. Raise a glass. Salute.
Cheers.
Thanks, James.